see the headlines now. Nobel Peace Prize winning president jumpstarts World War III. Now, in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, here's just a taste of the incessant propaganda that's being forced down our throats.
We believe very strongly, with high confidence, that in fact chemical weapons were used and that Mr. Assad was the source.
We cannot afford for Hezbollah or any terrorist group determined to strike the United States to have incentives to acquire or use chemical weapons. The Syrian regime's actions risk eroding the nearly century-old international norm against the use of chemical weapons.
From a national security standpoint, we have to send a very clear message to those who have weapons of mass destruction of any variety that they should forget about using them.
You know, I feel like I'm having deja vu because there's something about this rhetoric that just feels so familiar. It's almost like I've heard it before.
It is up to Iraq to show exactly where it is hiding its banned weapons, lay those weapons out for the world to see, and destroy them as directed. Nothing like this has happened.
We have first-hand descriptions of biological weapons factories on wheels and on rails. In a matter of months, they can produce a quantity of biological poison equal to the entire amount that Iraq claimed to have produced in the years prior to the Gulf War.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends.
Yes, apparently the establishment thinks that we're so stupid that we'll just lap up the exact same talking points used for the Iraq War. Hell, they could have just replaced the word Iraq with Syria and called it a day. However, now the stakes are much higher. Iranian leadership has already said that a U.S. strike on Syria would result in a counterattack against Israel. And Israel, well, they have a huge stake in toppling Assad as a way to destroy Hezbollah and Hamas, thus further weakening Iran's influence on the region. At first, Obama seemed happy to attack Syria without any congressional approval. But now, after some outcry, his administration is putting up the sham of placating the people by going through the democratic motions. Even though Kerry said Obama has the right to attack regardless of how Congress votes. So this week was the beginning of the charade of deliberation on the Hill. And I'm really happy to hear that some of the most fervent war hawks took the debate seriously enough to put away their video games. But no one has been beating the war drums harder than Secretary of State John Kerry. And being the best propagandist he can be, Kerry's given multiple impassioned speeches about Assad's chemical weapons arsenal.
And I believe, as President Obama does, that it is also important to discuss this directly with the American people. That's our responsibility, to talk with the citizens who have entrusted all of us in the administration and the Congress with responsibility for their security.
You know, Mr. Secretary, I agree with what you're saying, but that's not what you guys are doing at all. See, right now, support for an intervention in Syria is actually less popular than Congress, which says a lot when you consider how unpopular Congress actually is. But hey, I guess having 100% support from the defense industry trumps that measly 9% support from the American people. And what about the Syrians? Well, sadly, the bloody civil war has so far claimed over 100,000 lives. But suddenly the time to act is after an arbitrary red line has been drawn in the sand.
With our own eyes, we have seen the thousands of reports from 11 separate sites in the Damascus suburbs. All of them show and report victims with breathing difficulties, people twitching with spasms, coughing, rapid heartbeats, foaming at the mouth, unconsciousness, and death. This is the indiscriminate, inconceivable horror of chemical weapons. This is what Assad did.
Appeal to emotion much? You know, for a second there, I thought Kerry was describing the horrors of a night raid in Afghanistan or a drone bombing in Yemen. Because really, what's the difference in how your innocent child dies? So according to Kerry, there are thousands of reports proving the Assad regime used chemical weapons. Now, reports, of course, that we can't see. But what about the reports that I have seen that say the complete opposite? Like how the UN said that the rebels were previously using chemical weapons, or that the Saudi intelligence community sold the rebels chemical weapons. So forgive me if I don't believe your good word at face value, Mr. Secretary, but I think it's more than fair that you present the hard evidence you claim you have to the American public. After all, we're the ones paying for the cruise missiles you plan to drop over Damascus. Oh, but that's right. All this evidence you have is classified. I mean, really? The Bush administration at least cared enough about us to present falsified evidence to the UN. So what else did Kerry have to say?
So the primary question is really no longer, what do we know? The question is, what are we collectively, what are we in the world going to do about it? It matters that nearly 100 years ago, in direct response to the utter horror and inhumanity of World War I, that the civilized world agreed that chemical weapons should never be used again. And it matters deeply to the credibility and the future interests of the United States of America and our allies.
You know, man, Kerry, you just don't seem to get it. The U.S. uses chemical weapons routinely in modern warfare, whether it be white phosphorus or depleted uranium in Fallujah. So what gives this country the moral authority to be the world's policeman on the matter? And you're asking what the international community is going to do about it. Let's do a quick roll call, shall we? The UK, America's partner in crime, which together doctored intelligence to invade Iraq, doesn't even want anything to do with this war. The UN, who said yes to the Libya debacle, has said it would be illegal to strike without approval by the Security Council. And wouldn't you know it, France seems to be the only country backing unilateral action. So I'm confused. If freedom fries are French fries again, when are we going to start boycotting fish and chips? But seriously, we're waiting for people that don't represent us to vote to kill Syrians, to show the Syrian regime that killing Syrians is wrong. Look, guys, one thing is clear. This war is not about terrorism. If it were, this country wouldn't be financially backing al-Qaeda to topple Assad. It's certainly not about chemical weapons or humanitarianism. Is it really just a coincidence that there always seems to be a humanitarian crisis only in countries that the U.S. military and its corporate oligarchs have yet to conquer? You tell me.